Hello, everybody. It's great to be here one more time today. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm the CEO, President, Founder of GSD Get You Done Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture studio located in the heart of Silicon Valley. I'm a 17-time serial entrepreneur with several unicorns under the belt. I was on the original management team of Click Software, which is sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion, and also Eva.ai, an AI HR tech company that co-founded with Dr. David Yang. Uh, I see my little basset hound behind me, by the way, Anthony. So, my dog just came in, snuck in the room. So if you look behind me, you'll see her getting into trouble. Anyhow, so I've been involved in startups for almost 40 years, 17 startups and two unicorns. And as I said, we believe at GST that intellectual capacity is evenly spread, but opportunities are not. So I'd like to welcome you all to GST Presents Top Global Startups, where I speak with visionary founders building the next generation of global technology companies. As I said, my name is Gary Fowler, and I'm the founder and CEO of GST Venture Studios, where we work with entrepreneurs around the world who are scaling breakthrough companies in AI, verticals like health tech, fintech, and of course, other types of deep technologies like quantum. Today, we're going to dive into a topic that sits at the intersection of artificial intelligence and global commerce. How AI is transforming the way startups source and manufacture physical products. My guest today is Anthony Sardain, founder and CEO of Cavela, an AI-powered platform designed to automate sourcing for physical products. Anthony grew up in Southeast Asia in a family deeply involved in global trade, giving him early exposure to the complexities of international supply chains. Since 2017, he's been working at the intersection of AI and global trade, published some research on AI models applied to trade and leading AI product development at startups in San Francisco. In 2023, co-founded Cavela to tackle one of the biggest inefficiencies in global commerce, the manual, fragmented, and opaque process of sourcing physical products across borders. Today, we're going to explore how AI is shaping global sourcing, what modern startups need to understand about global supply chains, and how automation can dramatically change the economics of building physical products. So with that, I'd like to introduce him to the show. Hi, Anthony. How are you today?
Gary, thanks for having me on.
So where were you in Southeast Asia, by the way?
So we moved around kind of all over. So a bit of time in Malaysia, Hong Kong, Thailand, Singapore, mainland China as well. That was for the bulk of my life growing up. My family's been in Asia for about 3 generations now. Still have family living out there. And then more recently, I also spent about a decade living in manufacturing hubs around Latin America. So I got some visibility as well on that side of things as well.
So, you've done this for a while. So you grew. What country did you like the best, by the way?
I'd say Singapore. Singapore was great. It's a great place to build now, but it was also a great place to spend time as a kid growing up and as an adolescent as well.
Now, you didn't chew gum over there, right?
You can't buy gum, but you can chew gum. They'll get on you if you throw it on the ground or anything like that, though.
And what do they do if you throw it on the ground?
I mean, you just don't do it. People are just very careful about how they comply with the law in Singapore. You've probably heard a lot of horror stories, but it is
got lashes over there, right?
Caning is a thing. Yeah,
caning, and do they really do that?
They do.
Boy, that would hurt. I gotta tell you,
it's not something you want to exactly. It's not something you want to experience.
Nothing exciting about being caned by somebody that's swinging one of those things like a martial artist. Anyhow, you've been working at the intersection of AI and global trade since 2017. Mm-hmm. What made you realize AI could fundamentally change how trade works?
I think that the problem that we were tackling was the problem of sourcing. I've been looking at just e-commerce in general and saw that e-commerce from a selling perspective is almost a solved problem. It's very easy for anyone anywhere to sell anything online, but before you can obviously sell a product, you have to make a product, and making products is still very time consuming, convoluted, and opaque. And so I was looking at this space, and this was, I've been involved in this for some time. I've been sourcing for friends and family because of my connections, both in Latin America and Asia. And around the time that ChatGPT, GPT-3 started to get productized, I started to see how this could actually solve a lot of the pain points that you experience in sourcing, and we can get into what those are. But the good thing about AI is that it suddenly allowed you to deal with all of the complexity and heterogeneous data that sourcing presents. And it also allows you to automate a lot of this communication that happens between merchants and vendors. And basically, just looking at AI, you could start to see where the core pain points that prevented sourcing specifically from being automated in a meaningful way were actually now resolved, or were close to being resolved with AI. And so in 2023, we kicked things off officially. I'd been playing around with AI prior to the formation of Cavela, and version 0 of Cavela that I built for myself ended up becoming version 0 of the product of the company we ended up building.
So for founders who've never built a physical product, what's the traditional sourcing process actually like today?
It's very painful. So I'll walk you through the process. Generally, what it starts with is drafting of a product spec. You have to essentially write down what it is you want to make. This has to be a certain degree of research goes into this. As you can imagine, you're drawing reference images, sketches, diagrams, more complex product specs around certifications, if anything like that is needed. From there, you have to go find suppliers, and a lot of people will search overseas, which adds a degree of complexity. You'll go on Google, you'll go to your network. You might go on platforms like Alibaba, which I think they've done a great job, but it's famously quite difficult to navigate. And you'll get bombarded with all these different suppliers with kind of sketchy websites. You don't know who's a real supplier, who's a middleman, who's a trading company. And then you'll engage with them over WhatsApp or WeChat or something, and go back and forth over the course of weeks, come to an agreement about pricing, get quotes, order samples, hope the samples come in good, iterate on samples until you're happy, and finally place an order. You're going to wire money to a bank account in Hong Kong somewhere and hope for the best. Hope that you might try to organize QA, organize the freight forwarding, and then eventually it gets to your warehouse. Excuse me. You can see that there's a lot of pieces here, and sort of the common thread is that all of this communication that's happening back and forth, which is really just coordinating. It's, hey, are you able to do this? Do you have this certification? Do you handle these types of products? What's the update? What's the new timeline? And then drafting the product specs as well is quite complex too. So these are sort of the inroads where AI is really positioned to automate this pain.
Why is sourcing still so manual despite decades of globalization, digitization?
Because inherently, the problem with sourcing is that it is always going to be different. And the substrate that goes into sourcing, the data layer, is inherently heterogeneous. So you're going to be drafting Word documents and pulling in reference images and sketches and diagrams and maybe even more complex files like CAD files as needed depending on the product. There's no one size fits all. It's not like in the old pre-AI world where you could have had a predefined database structure that would have captured the totality of possible products that have to be sourced. It had to be these text documents and associated files. And that prevented any meaningful digitization because we didn't have technological tools that could handle whatever you throw at it. We couldn't have tech tools that could interpret a text file, that could interpret an image, draft a text file, and generate an image, and generate also these more complex files. So essentially, it was a technology problem. That's the first piece. And the second part is you have to see sourcing as a bit of a business transaction that's going back and forth between a merchant and a vendor. And there's no way around it. There's going to be this back and forth that is this communication layer. And it's not inherently complex communication. It's just high volume. And that's precisely what AI is very well suited to do.
These systems are very inefficient, right?
Yeah.
Sourcing's been, it's kind of like whim du jour when you go out there.
Mm-hmm.
But how did the inefficiencies affect the sourcing in terms of the timelines, the product quality, and costs? And you may never get it, right? Because you can't find. So how does it work like that? And how much better is it when you start using these AI-powered sourcing models?
So I think that they do a lot of things at once. So first of all, because it's so inefficient and because it's so complex, you end up getting these layers of middlemen that kind of insert themselves, leading to a inflation of costs, which is quite tremendous. What people end up finding is that going from supplier to supplier, getting different quotes, you can get wildly different quotes. And that's because there's a lot of inefficiencies in the market. That's because of how opaque and complicated it is. And that allows for these inefficiencies to plug themselves in. On top of that, you have the time delays, right? So it's not just that you're going back and forth over messaging with people that are on the other side of the globe, but this is also happening in a context of time zones. So, you might send an email and then they're going to receive it on their time zone. They'll read it, they'll internally coordinate and then come back to you and get back to you. And that just those two emails back and forth, that's 72 hours. And so you can see how that really stretches out a timeline of a process that could be a lot faster. If you have AI, which is what we are doing with our product, anticipate all the questions and surface those to the brand, capture all the information, and really have a full 360 of what is trying to be produced and where the flexibilities lie, then any question that comes on the supplier side can be answered immediately. And so we go from a point where we can capture the product information and then generate a quote within very few interactions. And as our data is getting more and more rich, we're actually able to pre-quote items before even contacting the supplier, which adds another layer of value, not just for the brand, but for the supplier themselves, because they don't have to deal with this administrative back and forth of coordinating.
I got it. So, what type of data does your AI system analyze when matching companies like with manufacturers? What is it looking for? And how do you, the Aristotle said the sum of the parts, and some of the Germans, some of the parts equal the whole. Mm-hmm. How does it tie it together, and why is it so much better?
So we have a rich database of suppliers that we've accumulated through our collective experience and the databases we put together. And we know what these factories are capable of. We have information on products that they've sourced before at a great granular level of detail, as well as the pricing, what they can do, what they can't do, as well as where they're best placed to serve. So, you can make, for example, a premium t-shirt, but premium means different things to different people. And so there's a big difference between a premium $10 t-shirt versus a premium $20 t-shirt, for instance. And so understanding where these factories lie is also an important layer of all of this. So we're capturing who these factories are, who's a true manufacturer, who's a middleman, who's a distributor, who's a trading company, their manufacturing capabilities, their price points and other products they've made in the past, and also other brands that they've worked with in the past, which is also an important layer. And we will take that and we'll match that against what the brands who are coming to us for sourcing are looking for, which means we're capturing the product detail, but also we are going to look at all of a brand's existing products and perhaps what's missing. And so what we're now starting to do is that we are pre-sourcing a brand's existing catalog, and so that they can plug into Cavela, and we'll say, hey, you're looking to source this product that you've approached us for. We see that you're already producing these 50, 60 other products. We can pre-quote you on those at a much more competitive price, and the samples are ready to go with one click of a button. So you can come into Cavela and we can immediately cut your production costs dramatically because we know which products we can source more competitively. On top of that, we're also scanning brands' existing product lines and suggesting and pre-quoting and pre-sampling a lot of their products that they might want to expand into. So new product creation is also made easier.
Do you see Cavela more as a decision engine, autonomous sourcing agent, or a marketplace? Because you're kind of describing all three of those.
Yeah. So when we started Cavela, candidly, we thought that there was a value in building this as what you're describing, kind of like a marketplace. And I think that what we've come to realize is with AI, the marketplace model has to adapt. Alibaba functions very much like a marketplace where you will search a term and you'll get thousands of suppliers. People aren't looking for thousands of suppliers. They're looking for one supplier, which is the one that they can come to and is most reliable. So what we've done is that we've partnered with a series of suppliers who we think are the most competent and provide the best quality products and most competitive pricing in all sorts of different verticals. And we're doing that effective matching, and they're becoming sort of part of the Cavela factory system. And so really what we're doing is Cavela is a you can see it this way, as a distributed factory. We're a distributed manufacturing capacity of the world that you can just plug into. We're an API into global manufacturing, so to speak.
So, how do you ensure trust and reliability? Because you're dealing with suppliers across borders.
Yeah, so we have boots on the ground that are, building those relationships. As I said, we're moving to a landscape where we have a cohort of trusted factories that are working, with us, and so building those strong relationships allows us to build a lot of those inefficiencies. So we have representation on the ground, but we're also deploying on-site QA at production time, which means that for every production run, there's a team that is visiting the factory and ensuring the quality of the products, and part of our product is you get a full report of the product production time to ensure that the quality is what you need it to be.
How do you think companies should think differently about supply chains in an AI native world? How does it change their perception?
Yeah, so I think that a lot of things are now going to happen. It depends where you're tackling this problem from. And it goes beyond just the sourcing piece. We're seeing, for instance, e-commerce brands are now pre-launching products. So they're generating, a series of different product ideas. They're generating images of what those products could be. And then assessing interest in that product before actually placing an order. So that's, one way that people are using that. We've seen a lot of, customers come to us with that precise motion in place. So you can be a lot more responsive and a lot more agile, thanks to AI, even outside of the sourcing piece. Within the sourcing piece, I think that the way to think about it is a lot of what AI is proving itself to be helpful now is to automate workflows. And there's a lot of workflows that go into sourcing. It's quite complex. It's tricky to automate the entire process, but I think what we're seeing is that brands are now increasingly becoming savvy to automating certain parts of their workflows, and I think that's going to continue. Whether you're operating at a small scale for a small DTC sourcing project, or at the scale of a larger retailer.
If you look at it, what's one sourcing myth founders companies still believe that no longer true?
That's a great question. What's a one sourcing myth that is no longer true? I think that, there's a lot of, this is interesting in the context of what's happening right now with Made in America. And I say I call this maybe a more recent trend, but people have been increasingly interested in moving away from China for their sourcing because of geopolitical reasons, and sort of perceptions of the safety of continuing to build their supply chain out of China. I think that what immediately becomes apparent for brands that suddenly start to move outside of China is you may get some gains, so to speak, in the security of, on the geopolitical instability side. But there's a reason that China has become the manufacturing hub of the world, and it's because there's a lot of infrastructure around manufacturing that makes everything very smooth. There's a lot of infrastructure within manufacturing. Anyone who's had experience reaching out or coordinating with suppliers in China versus anywhere in the world, including the United States, will see a very different motion. In China, you will shoot out a message to a supplier, and you will get quotes within the hour for the product. Highly responsive. They'll be sending you messages on Saturday, Sunday, doesn't matter, 3 a.m, 4 a.m. You can reach out to factories, outside of China, and, in Europe and the United States and Latin America, and you're waiting on responses for days, if not weeks. And so I think that the myth is that it's always a good idea to move out of China. I think that actually China is a very good place to at least spin up something quick. Speed is increasingly important across the business world, and China has a lot of gains to be made, a lot of gains to offer with regards to speed. And so I encourage generally a careful consideration of, moving outside of China for the sake of just moving outside of China. It depends on your business goals.
So give me an example. Let's say, we want to build a cloth doll, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we wanted to get human-like, right, cloth doll.
Yeah.
How would you go down through and source it? What would be the steps that you would take manually, and how different is what you do?
Sure. So the way that you would do it manually now is that you would probably do a bit of research on what goes into a cloth doll, what are the sort of the typical fabrics. You're selling to a presumably young children. Are there certifications in your country that require you to be able to sell that? And what are those certifications? You have to find a supplier who complies with those. What are the different components? You'd want to do research on what, are there small tweaks you could make to the design that would have meaningful differences in the price of the manufacturing? You would contact a designer. You would, come up with a couple designs for that product. You'd have them convert that into a product spec sheet that manufacturers can run with. And then that whole process could take, several weeks. And then you would then go and find cloth doll suppliers overseas. And as I said, you would reach out to them over email, back and forth. You'd eventually pivot to WeChat probably if you're sourcing in China. And then you'd agree on a price. You would send money over PayPal or over by wire. They would start the sample. You'd be, pinging each other back and forth, asking for updates. Hey, where's this at? They'll send some photos. Typically, they don't look very good. But you'll, go back and forth. They'll send you the sample via FedEx. You'll take a look at it. You'll make your notes, and then you'll, again, iterate until you're happy with it, and then you'll kick off the production order. And then from there, you will try find perhaps a QA team who can evaluate this, someone on site that you can trust that's not associated with the factory to double check. And then you would coordinate with a freight forwarder.
How important is that, Anthony?
Very important. I'd say about...
and how do you find those observers? Because it can be a pain in the butt, right?
It can be a pain in the butt. And not only that, it's hard to know who to trust.
Because they can be associated with the factory, right?
Exactly. As you can imagine, it's very easy for the factory to, give a gift, and suddenly the QA team looks the other way, or they make a cut of the production or what have you. There's all sorts of things that happen. So it's not just a matter of deploying on-site QA, but knowing who you can trust, and also having a QA team that is competent in the product. As you can imagine, there's a lot of intricacies to these products, and it's not just a matter of just looking and saying, yep, it looks good. You got to do some testing. If it's, if you're making fire retardant clothing, you need to, probably test out the fire retardant qualities, and that's a whole ordeal in and of itself. So there's a lot that goes into it. So that's the typical way of going through this process, and that's why product development, even if you're making something as simple as, dad hats, can take upwards of 3 months. And we see a lot of product development and ordering that goes all the way to a year, because the production time is 30 to 45 days. Your sea shipping is 30 days. These things really drag out. You add a couple of iterations of samples, so it can take a long time. In a Cavela world, it looks very different. So a brand engages with a AI agent who will anticipate all the questions that usually arise for that product. We'll be able to surface those questions that factories will typically ask you upfront, so you can answer everything and provide recommendations of what it makes the most sense given your objectives. We'll pull in reference images so that you can select and really refine your vision, and use the latest image generation tooling to actually generate a high quality image of what it is you're looking to make. And you can iterate on that until you're very happy with the full RFQ. It'll ask you all sorts of questions about your objectives. And understanding where you're flexible on certain things and less flexible on others. And then from there, it will match you against our database of factories, our partner factories. And in cases where we can quote immediately, it'll just surface a quote. And if not, it will coordinate with the factory to deliver quotes very quickly, no longer on the order of weeks, but usually on the order of a couple of days. You purchase a sample, pay by credit card. You're not wiring money overseas, and sample gets made, and it's tracked. Everything is tracked on a platform where you can see the timeline. You can see the samples being made in real time. and they'll be sent over to you. You inspect them. Because we've really nailed this process down, we can get the number of iterations of samples much lower than what brands are typically used to. We've been successfully doing one-shot samples in many cases, and then they can start the production order. Just recently, we had a brand who, we came to them with, or the platform came to them with a proposal for a new product that was adjacent to what they're currently making, and from product idea to placement of the order was about a month and a half, which is record time to get quotes, full fleshed out product spec, a sample made and sent to their house and evaluated. So you just move a lot faster.
So, looking at your core AI models, are you using LLMs, recommendation systems, graph models, or hybrid architecture?
So we're using a lot of language models. A lot of what the benefits here are. So we have a lot of data that these LLMs are pulling from, in the way of just the product spec piece is a big part of it, and using tooling as well around image generation, which is very important. And then from there, these language models are also coordinating with the factories with whom we have deep partnerships with, over communication channels that we've established with them to just rapidly go from proposal all the way to quote and sampling and ordering. So
supply chain data is notoriously messy, right? It's a lot of. How does Cavela handle unstructured information like spec sheets, RFQs, and supplier documentation? Because it could be anywhere.
Yeah, correct. Exactly.
I mean, on the page anywhere, right? Or physically anywhere.
So one of the first things we see, and part of the reason why sourcing is just so, a lot of things go wrong in sourcing is that you have these very long email chains, or multiple email chains where there's different versions of product spec sheets, different versions of quotes. Oh, we've changed this. Can you update the quote? And different people are CC'd, and it's all kind of a mess. One of the big challenges is that we resolved and has made this process a lot easier is we just centralized everything. And so there's like one single portal where the latest quotes are surfaced, where the latest RFQ is surfaced, and sort of the history of everything that's happened is centralized in one place, that everyone in the company has access to. And that allows you to at least have a streamlined and common understanding of what it is to make. And so there's no miscommunication that's happening between brand and factory. And we're able to avoid a lot of issues, and there's no bad surprises that happen as a result.
Do you see the future sourcing as AI co-pilots for procurement teams or fully autonomous sourcing agents?
I think I see a combination of both. I think that there are, for large product companies which have dedicated procurement teams, I think that you'll need some human in the loop, because for more vertical integration, it's more reliant on establishing of relationships and partnerships, and defining special workflows that are dedicated to that partnership between factory and brand. And so I see that having a strong co-pilot component. I think that for the lower MOQ plays where I'm looking for a smaller set of products, this could be probably entirely automated with the right structures in place. There still needs to be some relationships that are established, and SOPs and protocols that are put in place, and that's where we come in. We make that entire pipeline very, very easy for our autonomous agents to function within. So what we're looking to deploy quite soon is a Cavela that is open to very low MOQs, very low order quantities. So that anybody can make a product no matter how small their order value is, and that's because it's running on the rails that we've established with partnerships with these low MOQ factories, that fully autonomous agents are able to run along. So it'll be a combination of both, and I think that the implications for that are quite interesting too, because once you have automated and made very simple the process of product creation, a lot of things start to change. A lot changed when we made, for example, in the world of content creation online, podcasts, TikToks, videos, this kind of thing. We forget that 30, 40 years ago, if you wanted to have digital content of yourself, you needed a radio show, you needed a film crew. We've now moved to a world where you can take your phone and you can record a podcast and distribute it to an entire to the entire world as a team of one person, right? And you can do that as well with video in the form of reels, and you have these university kids that are putting together online courses and selling them. And so now you don't have to open a university. You can, do the equivalent at your scale. All of these things have happened because we democratized both production and distribution of digital content. The same thing is going to happen, not just for digital content, but for physical content. We've already solved the distribution piece of physical content, which is Shopify. It's very easy for you to sell. Once you've democratized the production of physical content and you don't need large dedicated teams, then you're not going to have a world where production of physical content is dominated by large brands and large celebrity brands, like the Casamigos of the world, the Hailey Bieber, and Kardashian brands. It's going to be individuals. And what that means is that suddenly every brand and every business can partake in physical products. We're starting to see that a little bit. You're starting to see these more forward-thinking, for example, coffee shops and hotels and fitness studios putting out lines of physical products. And we're still calling it merch because we have this very antiquated understanding of what it is, but it actually is an entire new arm of the business, which is physical products. So I think that what you're going to start to see is the creation of an entire sector of businesses that have historically not touched physical products because it was too complex and too expensive to get involved in, that suddenly can participate in the same way that they were not making digital content, 20 or 30 years ago, and now they are.
Yeah, what role does reinforcement learning? I've been building reinforcement models, right? And then and feedback loops. Because part of the problem is how do we improve, in your case, sourcing recommendations over time? Because and it's a moving target, right? You got to continuously sense it because it may change tomorrow versus today. So how do you use those? Are you using reinforcement models and feedback loops, or is it straight?
So I think, right now, there's a lot of places where you can have optimizations. That what we found is that there's so much to be done around the core offering of what basic LMs are able to do, that there'll come a time where we engage in much more sophisticated application of things like reinforcement models and what have you. But because there's so much to gain just using tooling that is standard language models with properly trained, you can get already kind of 80 to 90% of the way. And there's so much to be done just with that, that we've been focusing so much on that. There'll come a time where we really optimize using more sophisticated AI tooling. And we're also waiting for how these tools evolve. We've seen so much advancement over the last years that the state of the world is shifting so quickly. We're adapting to that as needed. But what we found is that building the relationships with the factories with whom we can actually have these things put in place, acquiring their data, and putting all these pieces together are where a lot we stand to gain as well. And I think that this is in line with how a lot of startups in the tech world are starting to think about things, right? I think there's an understanding that pure software plays are quite vulnerable in a sense, because if the cost of software goes down with automation of creation of code and what have you, businesses have to create a sort of a moat. And we're very well positioned for this because so much of successful automated sourcing actually lies on the back of establishment of strong relationships with suppliers, of niche data that isn't accessible online, all these things that go beyond just pure software. And so that's where we've really found that that's our core value add, and has a lot more resistance to what's coming over the coming years.
That's great. Anthony, we're coming to the top of the show. Closing thoughts, and how do people get a hold of you?
Absolutely. I think that's for brands and businesses that are looking to source physical products, you can find us on Cavela.com. We've now opened things up just as of this week to anyone can create an RFQ. And so in cases where there is, we think we'll be able to service those. We're focusing on slightly larger purchase orders. You'll be able to go ahead and start quoting and sampling with us for smaller order quantities. You'll be on a wait list for now, but we're very quickly going to be opening this up to anyone, no matter how small your order value is. And so just go on Cavela.com, put in your information, and create your product spec, and you'll either be able to start with us immediately or very, very soon.
No, that's great. Well, I appreciate you taking your time. How do people get a hold of you? What's the best way?
www.cavela.com.
That's great. Well, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule today for joining us. And thanks to all of you out there. We're now at several million views, over 1,600 podcasts, and we're now broadcasting in 73 countries around the world. So thanks to all of you. Thanks, Anthony. If you want to stay on for a few minutes after the show, I'm happy to talk. And have a great day. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. And I'll be back to you again soon with another exciting edition of GSD Presents Top Global Startups. My name is Gary Fowler, and I'm your host. Thank you, everybody. And thank you for taking time, Anthony.
Thanks so much, Gary.